Let us begin with a truth that doesn't whisper, it roars. When someone leaves, it is not just the silence that follows, it is the echo of every moment that was shared, the disorientation of a life once aligned, now uncertain. And when she returns, that moment is not simple. It is not romantic. It is not the fairy tale we were conditioned to crave. When someone returns after walking away, it's tempting to view the moment through the lens of longing. We want to believe that love has come full circle, that time has healed all wounds, and that this is destiny tying up its loose ends. But this narrative, while seductive, is also dangerous, because it places all the emphasis on the reunion and none on the reason for the rupture. It skips the work, bypasses the pain, and romanticizes the return as if leaving didn't cost something vital. Love in its truest form does not begin with someone's comeback. It begins with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are the architecture of self-worth. They are the invisible yet unwavering lines that say, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I will not tolerate. When love is rekindled without boundaries, it is not truly love. It is reenactment. A performance of closeness without the safety of trust. Without boundaries, the past is doomed to repeat itself. No matter how soft the tone, how sincere the apology, or how intense the chemistry. It's important to understand that the return of a person does not guarantee the return of respect. Someone can miss you and still not value you. Someone can want you back without being willing to meet your needs. And so, without the framework of boundaries, what often happens is that the power dynamics remain unchanged. One person comes back seeking comfort, and the other offers it, even at the expense of their own dignity. This is not connection, it is sacrifice masquerading as devotion. Boundaries create the space for accountability. They force the question, why now? Why return after the leaving? What has shifted, not just in her, but in the dynamic between you? Has the absence brought wisdom, or simply a craving for familiarity? These are not easy questions to ask, but boundaries demand them. They refuse to let emotion be the only guide. Because emotion, while valid, is not always wise. When you lead with boundaries, you lead with clarity. You are no longer asking whether she wants to come back. You are asking, does this serve my growth? Is there alignment in what we both value, want, and are willing to invest? You are shifting the focus from being chosen to doing the choosing. That is the quiet revolution of boundaries. They return your agency, even in the face of powerful emotion. In delay, too often we confuse acceptance with love. We think that saying yes proves our devotion. But love that requires self-abandonment is not love, it is compliance. Boundaries say, I can care deeply and still protect myself. They allow for compassion without capitulation. They make room for a love that is mutual, not one-sided. And they ensure that if a relationship is to be revived, it will be built on respect, not just history. There is also grief in boundaries. Grief for the version of love you once held. Grief for the version of yourself who waited, hoped, or endured. But there is also liberation, because once boundaries are in place, you are no longer held hostage by someone else's timing. You no longer need to prove your worth by being available when they return. You get to ask, does this relationship still have a place in the life I've built since she left? And perhaps most radically, boundaries allow love to be tested, not through suffering, but through integrity. They create the conditions for genuine intimacy to emerge, if and only if both people are willing to meet there. The return then becomes not a restoration of the past, but a negotiation of the future. And in that negotiation, your needs, your voice, and your truth finally take up the space they've always deserved. When someone reappears after a rupture, whether it was a slow drifting apart or a sudden painful exit, there is often a powerful emotional current pulling both people toward reconnection. The mind floods with memories, laughter once shared, a specific way her voice softened that night, the places where your hands used to meet naturally. Reminiscence has a way of rewriting the past, polishing its rough edges and amplifying the good. And in that nostalgia, there is often a hope that things might simply return to what they were. But memory is not repair. Longing is not restoration. And a history together, no matter how deep, is not a substitute for the work of repair. Reconnection without repair is a house rebuilt on the same cracked foundation. It may feel familiar, even comforting, but the instability remains. The old patterns wait, dormant but intact, ready to surface at the first sign of stress. Without actively tending to the rupture, acknowledging the wounds and addressing the reasons for the disconnection, any reunion is destined to orbit the same emotional terrain. It may take on new language, new rhythms, but underneath it is the same unresolved dynamic, rehearsing itself. Again, repair requires accountability. That means naming, not evading what went wrong. It means resisting the temptation to minimize, reframe, or gloss over past behaviors in favor of a tidy reunion. Nostalgia is seductive because it avoids discomfort, but repair demands discomfort. It invites awkward conversations, emotional vulnerability, and a willingness to confront not only what the other person did, but what you allowed, tolerated, or ignored. Repair is not an accusation, it is a reckoning, and both people must be ready for it. To repair asks for more than apologies. It asks for transformation. The person returning must not only say, "I'm sorry," but demonstrate a change in how they listen, how they show up, how they relate. It is one thing to express regret, it is another to be willing to face the impact of your choices, to witness the hurt they caused, and to stand in that awareness without defensiveness. And equally, the one receiving that return must be honest about their own boundaries, their needs, and whether trust can truly be reestablished, not just because they want it to be, but because there is evidence that it can be. Repair is a mutual process, not a performance by one party for the forgiveness of the other. Both must be willing to re-enter the emotional landscape of the relationship with new eyes. That means questioning assumptions, being honest about fears, and confronting what was left unsaid the first time around. Often people rush to feel close again. They want to hold each other and pretend nothing ever fractured. But repair cannot happen in the absence of truth. And truth, when it is finally spoken, may challenge the desire to reconnect at all. In fact, sometimes, in the process of attempting to repair, it becomes clear that reconnection is no longer possible or even desirable. This too is a form of healing. Because repair is not about getting back together at any cost. It is about understanding what broke, why it broke, and what would need to be different for it to work again. If those differences can't be embodied, not just promised, then the most respectful choice may be to let go with clarity instead of returning in confusion. That too is intimacy, knowing when to stop reenacting the past. What often makes reconnection so alluring is the fantasy that the pain of the separation can be undone. But pain cannot be erased. It can only be integrated. It becomes part of the story, part of the new terrain you must walk together if you are to build something authentic. Repair means deciding whether you can both live with that history and still choose one another, not as a return to what once was, but as a conscious commitment to what might be possible now. The work of repair is slow, deliberate, and often unromantic. It lacks the cinematic glow of a tearful reunion or a dramatic kiss in the rain. It involves scheduling conversations, circling back after conflict, noticing emotional patterns, and asking difficult questions. It requires grace, yes, but also accountability, structure, and consistency. It asks for emotional maturity over intensity and integrity over fantasy, because without repair, reconnection is merely repetition. But when done right, repair becomes the soil in which real intimacy, complex, grounded, and resilient, can finally grow. There is a quiet but powerful shift that occurs when someone realizes they are not just a character in someone else's story, but the author of their own. Too often, relationships, especially those marked by abandonment or sudden return, have a way of pulling a person into a passive role. One where the tempo, the turning points, and even the endings are dictated by another's choices. In this dynamic, identity becomes reactive, shaped by what someone else did, when they left, and how they decide to reappear. But that perspective diminishes autonomy. It turns a whole life into a subplot in someone else's emotional journey. When a woman returns after choosing to leave, the temptation is to freeze in place, waiting to see what she will do, how she will act, whether she will stay this time. That hesitation is not weakness, it is the body's memory of unpredictability. But within that pause is also a critical opportunity, the chance to reclaim authorship, the chance to decide what role, if any, she should have in the story moving forward. Reclaiming authorship does not mean erasing the past or pretending that the pain didn't matter. It means refusing to let the past dictate the present without conscious examination. In many relational dynamics, especially those rooted in unequal emotional labor, people begin to internalize the idea that their worth is proven through endurance. That if they wait long enough, love will return. That if they are patient, forgiving, open-hearted, eventually they will be chosen. But authorship is not about being chosen. It's about choosing. Choosing who is allowed in your life. Choosing what kind of relationships you are willing to participate in. Choosing how your story unfolds. Not just when someone comes back, but especially when they do. A chapter is a moment, a transition, a phase. It's something that happens to a character. But an author makes choices about what each chapter means. An author edits. An author says, this arc no longer serves the story I want to tell. And just because someone once held emotional significance does not mean they deserve narrative significance now. Rewriting doesn't mean denying feelings. It means giving those feelings context, structure, and direction. It means recognizing that the emotional pull of familiarity cannot override the necessity of self-respect. To live as a chapter in someone else's story is to live in reaction. Every move becomes contingent upon someone else's decision, whether they love, whether they return, whether they change. But when you are the author, the focus shifts inward. The primary question becomes not what does she want, but what do I need? Not will she